When the angels had left the shepherds, and they'd gone to heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let us go now to Bethlehem and see this thing that has taken place, which the Lord has made known to us." So they went with haste and found Mary and Joseph, and a child lying in a manger. When they saw this, they made known what had been told them about this child. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds told them. But Mary treasured all these words and pondered them in her heart. The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all that they had heard and seen, as it had been told to them. The grass withers and the flower fades, but the word of our God stands forever. So in about 80 AD, maybe 85, something like that, the author of the Gospel of Luke, we'll call him Luke, even though we don't actually know, but he sat down to write this story about Jesus. Why? Well, it wasn't because people didn't know what happened in the story. Okay? Mark had already been written. In fact, Luke kind of cribs most of Mark in his story. So Luke clearly knew that people know what had happened, so that certainly wasn't it. And it wasn't because Jesus is cool, though maybe Jesus is cool, and it's not to tell you that Jesus is better than you. It's not like that at all. No. It seems to me that Luke authored this particular story because he saw something. He saw that human society was devolving because of its focus on power, because of the accumulation of power with too few people and how it permeated his society. And he knew that the work of God in this story about Jesus the Christ was the antithesis of that kind of power. That's why Luke told the story. You know, when you take the story just in little pieces, maybe you don't see it, but Luke, more than any of the other Gospels, I think, was all about a confrontation between two different kinds of power. That's why he told this story. He could see and he knew that the powerful simply do not care about others. It's almost a definition of the powerful. In order to become powerful, you have to not care about the things that other people do or suffer. That's what it's like. And when there's too much power being focused on in a society, relationships begin to deteriorate, tension flows, you get division, you get fear, you get anxiety. I mean, this is what Luke seemed to understand. It's isolating because power is the ability to affect other people without being affected yourself. There's kind of a distance between you and another person, if that's the way it is. You don't value others. You can see it in this story. We were talking in Bible class last Sunday about Mary. And one of the women said, well, you know, I'm trying to imagine being pregnant on that donkey about to deliver a baby. The emperor didn't care about the fate of this young woman. The emperor didn't care about the shepherds either, taxing them to the hilt. In fact, the whole reason for this census that's being taken is so that the emperor can get more money and more resources out of the people. Power is interested in using people, not in being with people. You know, Mary, she's just cog, a pesky Jew. We have no text to tell me this, but I am quite certain that Caesar, back at home, was justifying his hold on power by talking about those pesky Jews, pesky barbarians, the enemies at our gates. That's how power operates. Not the first one to talk about pesky Jews either. Consider what happened in Germany. That's what happens when power gets hold. Doesn't care about other people. Sees them as just people to be manipulated so that power can be held. Think about Putin in Ukraine. not caring about what's happened to them. Think about everyone just about in the earth these days and what we call illegal immigrants. They're the problem, don't you see? We have to hang on to power so we know how to live and can protect ourselves so we won't be affected by them. That's how power seems to operate, it's how it seems to work. I am told that the United States of America is the most powerful, richest nation in the world. We dismantled USID at the beginning of this year. Power doesn't care about other people. And that creates a society that's filled with fear. It's permeated by fear. Because you're just waiting for somebody to have power over you. It happens all the time. The attitude spreads. Instead of wanting to be self-sacrificial or giving in some way, caring about other people, we're all kind of looking over our shoulders, wondering what's going to happen next. It's the nature of things. It's what Luke saw back in his day under Emperor Augustus, and I think what we can see now in this day. So what do? Well, that's obvious. Don't we seek power? I mean, if we're concerned about other people affecting us, affecting our lives, pushing us around, then don't we need enough power to be able to push back? That's the kind of the instinct of the human, especially in a society that's permeated by this attitude. We want more power. In fact, what we want is someone or something that has enough power to save us, to protect us, to make everything all right. Isn't that how we imagine God? God, all powerful and mighty, up there above it all, sitting somewhere right at the edge of creation, I guess, reaching his hand in to do whatever he wants whenever he wants to do it. Things don't go well, some catastrophe happens, well, the Holocaust or the plight of the homeless, things like that. Well, those of us believe have to just accept it and not question it. At least that's what I was told when I grew up. End up with this very powerful God. If that's how the shepherds understood God to be, it's no wonder they were afraid when the angel showed up. Terrified at some power that's going to reach down from on high and arbitrarily impact your life. No wonder that they'd be afraid. And yet, every single time in the Bible when an angel shows up, the first words out of the angel's mouth, do not be afraid. No need to be afraid, because God's not like that. There is no God up there that's throwing things around and making things happen exactly the way God wants it. God is a God who enters into relationship with creation. Creation itself is built on relationships, from quarks all the way up to humans. Everything is built upon a relationship. It's the power of those relations as we're drawn together that gives creation its shape, it gives creation its hope, its beauty. That's the nature of God. That's the power of God to draw things together, to bring beauty out of things that are ugly. It's a process. It takes time. There is no God who can just do it like that, because it's unfolding over time. I'm sure you've been told that that's not what God's like. Maybe you're a little surprised that I'm saying this. I can actually see a couple of faces going, really? It's not the God I find in here, that power God. Now, the God I find in that Bible is a God who relates to human beings, who can be hurt by another human being, who feels disappointment and joy, who longs for intimacy with human beings. That is with you. This God is not out there throwing lightning bolts. This God lives within, longing to touch our lives, to enjoy our lives with him. This God is willing to be hurt so that you can grow and learn. Kind of like a parent when a kid first learns to lie to you. It hurts. But we work through it. We place a boundary, sure. We're willing to be hurt so that the child will grow and develop. The trouble is we use this word God too much. More and more this year I've decided I'd really like to do away with it. I know, don't worry, session, I'm not going to do away with it completely, but tempted I am. I have done away with it in my class on spiritual disciplines. We don't call it God, we call it the something. Right? You forget everything you've ever learned about God and you ask yourself, is there something in this story? Is there something within us, around us, over? Is there something? We call it the something. It gives us a chance to think of things a different way. And so this something God that loves, that relates, that built a creation where everything is in relationships, it's not at all surprising that this God would begin his work in the story with a baby. A baby that has not yet been formed. A baby that needs to form relationships of all kinds within and without. That's why I made a point of reading the text accurately when I said there was no room for him in the upper room. For some reason, we've decided that that's a commercial inn. It's kataluma in Greek, and it's a commercial inn, but it's not. It's the same word that was used to describe the upper room at the end of Luke when the disciples were there. If you want a commercial inn, it's called Pandalokian, and you find that in the Good Samaritan story. Okay, so Luke knew it. No, it was the upper room, and the reason it's important is because Jesus was not rejected. This little baby boy was born into a family. I like to think that if it was in the living room of a home, maybe it was his grandma and grandpa who were holding him. God didn't abandon this little child. That's not how it works. God draws people around us so that we can be whole and full. I have a 9-week-old grandson right now. And he was over on Sunday night. There is something about a baby, is there not? I don't know if you remember the last time you held one or went one, but there's something that draws us towards this new life. These tiny little features, and yet all expressive, these little hands just beginning to grab onto a finger. And the legs. Kicking like, look what I can do. Kicking and swinging his arms. What's happening there? I can almost see the synapses growing in the kid's brain as he learns how to move his limbs. It's about relationships. Even relationships about nerves as his brain grows. That's how God is. That's who God is. And so that little one grew up in the story and developed as he continued to have relationships with those around him and came to a fairly deep and profound understanding about the difference between coercive power of Caesar Augustus and the power of God that comes from drawing things together and making them beautiful and whole. That's what he understood. We're drawn to the work of God, to this relationship building. We're drawn to it. We see something in it wherever we go. You can see it in a little baby. One of my grandchildren had a big disappointment this week. somebody in the school where she is really exercised power inappropriately on her. And she's responded with such grace. Not trying to hit back. Boy, I'll tell you, when I heard about it, that was my instant reaction. Instead, she seeks to heal. She's trying to figure out how this other person feels, how they might respond. There's something about the way she's operating that's pretty attractive. You have this sense that it's going to lead to something that's positive and not negative. Yes, we're vulnerable when we do that. When we actually seek to understand what other people feel and what other people need in any particular moment, it can threaten us because we'll be affected, just like God is affected every time you hurt, every time you're afraid. Then God comes close. And that relationship affects our hearts, our imaginations, the way we see the world and our purpose around it. It's when we see peace growing in the world, that everything drawn together in perfect harmony. There's something about it. We're drawn to it. We know. It'll give us hope. You see just a little bit of the seed of it, and you begin to think, ooh, something might happen, and we're drawn to it. It's the only place you find real joy is when you see relationships just emerge and grow. And the foundation of that, is love. Not a big dose of oxytocin, right? Love is the strength and power of God that unfolds creation from death to new life. Dancing with this deep desire to move things together in perfect harmony. This is powerful, creative love we're talking about, and we are drawn to it whenever we see it. The beauty of nature, there's something in it, and we know it. Look at the stars in the heavens, there's something, and we know it. This is the nature of this little baby, of this story that Luke has told us about this very different kind of power. The power to change hearts, the power to build things, the power to create beauty instead of despair, fear, anxiety, and ugliness, and we are surrounded by that. So, Luke wrote this story partly so you would understand the difference between those two kinds of power, but mostly, not so you'd think Jesus is cool, but so you'd understand it's your story too. Each and every one of you is a child of God. Each and every one of you is an expression of that love that makes beauty in the world. Each and every one of you began as an infant and continued to form. And all of us have an opportunity to still see that little child within us and reform the way we've seen the world. Because when we do that, when we lean in or look for that something in the midst of our creation that brings hope and joy and peace, and when we see that and fan the flame on that, that's when God's creation will emerge. That's when the next step in God's beautiful plan will unfold. And you and I, we get to be part of it. That's why Luke told the story, so that you will know to lean in to the love and the closeness and the harmony of God and away from the kind of power that tears people down and separates them. Whatever burden weighs you down, whatever flaw, whatever trauma you've experienced or dream that's been left unfulfilled in your life, you can know this. You are an expression of the creative love and power of God. You cannot be separated from God's love. God seeks your perfection and not your destruction.